And I got to sit with Luke several times and just process his faith and his identity in Christ. A really good young man was emerging who was learning to authentically own his life and his faith and put those two together. Who was Luke? It was most often said everybody who met him loved him. He was there for anyone. He would go out of his way and inconvenience himself for anyone. He was not a respecter of persons at all. He was a safe place. He was a blast to be with. He was real. He had hundreds who considered him friend. Since the news of Luke's death quickly spread through the channels of this community, all of us who are here, I've had dozens of conversations that all seem to start like this. Can you imagine receiving the news that one of your own children... Okay, so why? Why? Why does a 30-year-old man with a young wife and a child and a baby on the way, why does he have to be taken? I know we're asking that. I'm asking that. Why? And I want you to know that nobody has any idea. Nobody has an answer to that. Anyone who tells you that they do does not. Such an event breaks our hearts, it tests our faith, it challenges our sensibilities, it makes us shake our heads. And many will try to give rationales at a time like this. They will say, well, if this hadn't happened, then this would have never happened. You know what? Don't do that to any of the family. For none of that seems worth the loss. And so none of us have any idea, but I am certain the one who loves Luke most absolutely and completely and wonderfully does. This is a fallen world, and none of us avoids death. The only question is, how will I live the hours of this life that I'm given? So maybe here's the rest of the story for us. You see, some of us might not know that Luke battled his entire life with being overwhelmed. Overwhelmed and confused and hurt by events and betrayal that he could not understand or fix. He knew only how to shove it down deep and far away by a number of means. You and I would be deeply comforted to know that God was showing him how to open up and let others in. You'd be comforted to know that Luke was finding peace. We have this beautiful letter, this email letter that he wrote to his Aunt Carol. And I'll just kind of read a couple excerpts from it. He says, Aunt Carol, I've been going through some really hard times in my life in this last year. I've been turning to drinking and medications to secretly try to deal with life that I felt was too much for my shoulders to handle. I was stressed out about being a dad, about trying to help Fred with dealing with cancer, with many, many things. I thought I was doing okay, but in truth I was causing a huge wall to go up around my heart to somehow try to self-protect. I put distance between Angie and myself, and then I would lash out at her for not caring enough for me or loving me. God slowly has broken down things in many times when I really did not want him to, and all I wanted to do was sleep and hide. I felt like a failure, and I just wanted to go hide somewhere so I wouldn't screw up anything else for anyone else in my life. I felt like I was always just going to go a few miles faster than I could run, and there were always things were slipping away no matter what I did to hold things together. I dealt with this many, many ways. One was to just let things happen and sit back and say, well, there's nothing I could have done to prevent it, so why try? But what I have been slowly beginning to realize is that life is fast and things are going faster and faster, and sometimes God's been talking to me, but I already figured out in my mind what direction things should go, and since God wasn't telling me that, then that I better work harder to get it done. when many times He was giving me a different direction to go and I just didn't want to hear it. Something I'm also learning is sooner or later, God will make His voice heard, even if He has to let my life crumble to get my attention. I have joined a men's group at Open Door Fellowship, and I told Tommy about that. It's really changing my life. Angie and I are taking a financial class that's truly changing our marriage. And for the first time in over a year, I feel hope and peace slowly returning to my heart. I spent last year of my life trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. I pushed my wife to the point of almost leaving me. I tried to take on the world and I lost. I worry about everyone in your family dealing with so many things that I would not begin to understand. But I want you to know this. God is giving me new hope, and it slowly is growing each day. I've learned that emotions confuse so much in my life, but God has given me deep hope. Some of us might not know that Luke battled with taking his pain to alcohol for a season, and you and I would be deeply comforted to know that he was trusting God and others with that in a profound and beautiful way these last 6 months of his life. He told his mom recently, in the men's group, I have finally found a place to let it all out. You might be comforted to know that his accident had absolutely nothing to do with alcohol. Some of us might not know that while Luke and Angie deeply adored each other, they struggled. He didn't know how to allow her to love him. You and I would be comforted to know that in these last few months he was learning how to let her in to love him. And he was learning how to open up and give his love to her. He was learning to open up and give his love to her, and their marriage was becoming a beautiful place of safety and joy that they had longed after for so long. Some of us may not know that Luke went through a season where he had lost hope in life. You and I would be comforted to know that his rediscovered relationship with God and the coming birth of their child had created a deep and confident hope in his life. Angie said he finally felt like we were moving into our future. This is a fallen world and none of us avoids death. The only question is, how will I live the hours I'm given? The ultimate test of a man is not how put together he is. There are no such people. The test of a man is what he chooses to do with the things he cannot solve. Luke was choosing, you guys, over and over again, especially in this last year, to let God. He was learning to humble his heart and trust the God that he had known since childhood and trust those friends close around him. And God's timing was perfect so that these children will be able to hear about a father who was a godly man. For a godly man is one who believes God. Period. Some men live 80 years and never get it. They ignore God's love and grace and they live in arrogance and pride. Some men live 30 years and get it. And they leave a legacy that influences generations to come. So amidst our grief, please see the grace and mercy and kindness of our God to allow Luke enough time to learn these truths so that those around him would carry a legacy of beauty and life. So where is comfort? It is all over. These things we know and we must comfort each other with. First, this: God allows and makes no mistakes. He loves Luke more than all of us combined. He sees the beautiful giant tapestry from atop, not the jangled threads that we see from below. Second, Luke is home, fully alive for the first time. I love in John where it says, where Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me shall live even if he dies, and everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you realize this afternoon the only one of us